I would say the thing that gives those people the edge, and the thing that gives their work the edge, and the thing that made a real impact for their business, if I could make my own formula, it would be these three things. I think number one is ambition. I think the second thing is, I'm going to say honesty or collaboration. And I think the third thing is determination. I love an ambitious client. It's the first thing I look for at any new agency that I join. And I don't care whether it's the head of marketing or the very most junior person on the team. You always know that's somebody you can do something with. The second, honesty is so important. I start every single piece of creative with a business problem. And the more honest you can be with your agency about that, the better. And then determination. All the people that I mentioned are people with the determination to see through the inevitable bumps in doing anything with edge, and are able to get their organization on side and help you as a partner deliver. So that's my formula for agreement or disagreement with the rest of the panel. But I think those three things, ambition, determination and honesty, are absolutely crucial. I'll make one more observation if I've got time. Inevitably, I'm going to talk real fast. Inevitably, we're going to talk about bravery at some point today. Agencies always end up talking about how they want clients to be brave.
I sat down and looked at the same formula and considered obsession and fear, and I came to the conclusion that both are actually really bad smelling Calvin Klein perfumes. In truth, both are actually negative behaviours. I personally believe the creative edge is achieved when both agency and client are prepared to get outside of and stay outside of their comfort zones.
I actually think obsession and fear drives excellence. I'll just preface that by saying fear conducive to corporate bullying is never a good thing. But outside of that, fear it's a primitive behaviour. It means that something big is coming, and it means that you're outside of your comfort zone. And as you said, and if from what I heard of the panel before, the landscape is constantly changing, and if you don't feel a little bit of fear, it probably means that you're not changing with it. And so fear is, in that context, something positive. And obsessive, from my experience, I mean, there's a spectrum of people that are obsessive from here to there, but if you're about there, it's probably a good thing. If you're obsessive about solving a problem.
What's the appetite like with clients and with partners to have that conversation that's maybe bigger than a CMO? It's a CEO and a CIO conversation around, this is the idea, but for it to really be relevant to consumers, it has to come to life in customer, has to come to life in product, has to come to life in retail.
I think it's what we are shooting for. It's the ideal, and we hit the mark often, but not as often as we would like, if I'm totally honest.
We've been getting, and we do respond to briefs that are asking for what we call an organising thought. And that organising thought isn't an ad, it's a galvanising thought that does more than just join your advertising touch points, but it binds the culture of the company. Like Vodafone as an example, there's our brief and our response was an organising thought, and that has bound much more than just their channel communications. It goes into lots of different areas of their business and over the next 5 years. And so you do see that there is if you read between the lines of the brief that you get from clients, they may not know how to articulate what they want, but sometimes it is asking for that organising thought. Actually
Experimenting. So without, and I don't mean this to be a plug for the agency, but With Collective essentially is a data-driven agency. So I'm fascinated at the minute by the proximity of data and the product. If the way we talk about it is logic and magic. And for me, that data has to be the future of how we think. So I'm trying as best as possible and probably making a lot of mistakes, but our intention is to make the kind of the logic and the magic coincide.
Yeah.
From my interpretation, and when I'm wrong in 5 years' time, you can all come back and laugh at this statement. But my belief is that that's the future of the business. Certainly the future of creative departments, to have the data in the middle of the work. All of us in this room could question whether we're actually the future of this business.
If we become too head-driven in our marketing initiatives and we lose track of what our heart's telling us, we're just going to be creating more shit that no one cares about.
Yeah.
If you can find the story behind the numbers, it's often a human story.
If you take that, the brilliance of data, the brilliant things we can do with data, the insights that we can glean from it, and then these multiple screens and multiple touch points of places that we can get to people, if you take that to its logical conclusion, one day, probably much sooner than we think, you'll be able to, I'm a mad keen fisherman, I'm not on Facebook, but I am on Instagram. Every fishing tackle purveyor will be able to buy my information and know where I'm looking, on what screen, at what time, and that I like fishing. Probably that I like a certain kind of fishing.
Do you really like fishing?
Just have a look at my Instagram page.
Okay.
Yeah, there's more pictures of fish than there are of my 3 daughters, so marginally. But the truth is, once all of those fishing tackle companies can hit me, know exactly where I am and hit me with their sales tool, then unless you've got creativity, unless you've got a story to tell, unless you're interesting, unless they care, they've got to give a shit. If they don't give a shit about what you're putting out there, I don't know if you've ever watched kids go through their feeds but it's this, stop, this. And you've got to be the point where they stop. You've got to be the point where they stop and look. And it doesn't matter how good your data is, how shiny your technology is. If you haven't got an interesting story to tell, they won't stop.